Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And warmer from the low, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to go with a two-part conversation with our good friend Rocco Miller. He does amazing work over at Bracketeer.org. We're really running low on college basketball news and notes, so we're going to be doing a lot more two-part conversations with Rocco. We're going to be talking about a wide variety of things, the American Conference and where they're standing right now, some of the mid-majors that are really standing out to him, where we're at just in terms of being able to gauge these teams, and the fact that summer workouts are starting up as well. So we've got a lot to talk about, and we're going to get you guys some great information, and we're going to work every single day to get you set for what is going to be the most amazing season ever, the 2025-26 college basketball season. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you, for this podcast, you have one of two ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, RCM, name does not matter, so per usual, please send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Do not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over at edgeboost.bet, you're able to access your funds whenever you want, wherever you want, for any gambling-related transactions. When you go to edgeboost.bet, do utilize that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That gets you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's talk with the man, the myth, the legend in Rocco Miller, who does such an amazing job. Take a look at this great game that we all know and love over at Bracketeer.org, and you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, the number 8 altogether. And Rocco, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, great to be back with you. Here we are, middle of June, man. Can you believe it? Around here in San Francisco, Dons have already started their workouts. St. Mary's is doing all sorts of team camps this coming weekend and their own workouts. Santa Clara is getting after it. So just a lot of buzz already, even though it seems like the Final Four just wrapped up. We're already 2.5 months past that, and 2.5 more months will be running into October, I believe. So, September, October, in that frame, we're basically on the doorstep of the season. So there's never enough time in the day, and there's never enough time in the off season for all the stuff we got going on, but that's why we love it.
Oh, it is why we love it. And I do have to ask you about this. Where are you sort of at in terms of your off-season evaluations of these teams? Because now we're to the point where most of these guys are off the board in the transfer portal. We'll see a few of these low/mid-major teams add a few more. Like there are a few guys that just hadn't gotten offers yet. There's going to be a low/mid-major team that's going to get desperate and offer a guy, something like that. But now we really know a lot of these guys and where they're going to be going. Now we're past the NBA draft decision. So how do you start evaluating these teams? Because now I feel like what we're able to look at with these rosters is pretty set.
Yeah, we've got a lot of the information at most places. I think there's going to be a couple pieces here and there sprinkled in, kind of the way they have been the last couple of weeks. And then as we go into August, I remember, last year there was a few late changes, whether it be a coach moving to another school. Several assistant coaches could still move in the next couple months. And sometimes that could have a player leave with him. We just saw that happen here at Stanford. For example, there's a big-time prospect, Jalen Petty, reopened his recruitment and decommitted from Stanford after also decommitting from New Mexico with Richard Pitino going to Xavier. So that was an interesting one. Now rumored to go to Texas Tech. There's also some rumors of a staff member at Stanford potentially on the move as well. So you just don't know when the dominoes are fully going to be done. But yeah, you're correct. There are a lot of foundational pieces in place that really aren't going to move too much between now and opening night. And I do think, the largest story out there is essentially a continuation of what we saw last season, which is the Power Five is exactly that when you include the Big East. And even the Big East themselves are probably fifth in that group. I mean, right now, if you look at some of the projections, I haven't put my own rankings fully together yet for bracket forecasting purposes, but I think a roundabout idea would be St. John's, of course, with all the momentum, looking like a top 10 team right there with UConn. And then Creighton's probably a top 20 to 25 roster. But after that, I think you start to see quite a drop off in that league. Villanova, probably mid 40s for Torvik, Providence in the 50s, Xavier, a lot of upside, but everybody's new in the 60s, and even DePaul and Georgetown, low 70s. So, there's a lot of concerns, I think, with the bottom of that league, with where Butler's at, certainly where Seton Hall's at. And so that's just kind of the start of it. And then you jump into like true Mountain West and below leagues. It would consider Mountain West like the sixth best league right now. But even for their sake, San Diego State leading the charge at 42nd in this projection. Honestly, with the surgery and everything that happened to the big man, Magoon Gloth, we don't know if that's really going to be the case. If he doesn't come back till January or something along those lines, they're going to have a really hard time building a resume and competing at the Players Era Festival, where they are going to have their biggest opportunity to play 3 huge games in Vegas. You also look at a team like Boise State, a team like Utah State, teams that like the Mountain West has been counting on to produce multiple bids. I do kind of like the pieces at Boise. I like the pieces at Utah State too, but it's hard for those teams to get games. That's the largest story right now. If you just snap the chalk with the top 45, there's probably only about 3 or 4 teams, and that includes Gonzaga. Memphis is even projected as like 70th right now, Greg, to where you might only have 3 or 4 teams inside the bubble based on talent and returning minutes and a lot of these formulas that go into the projection. So I'm going to be probably starting next season hoping for a handful of these A10 rosters who I like, handful of these American and Mountain West WCC rosters who I like to really step up and be flawless, because otherwise we're going to be in a tough spot forecasting a bracket that will be full of Power 5 teams.
And you didn't mention this conference too much, as Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups. The American, I think, is so interesting as well, because with North Texas, I don't think that they're going to be back to being number 364 out of 364 teams in terms of total possessions per game. They weren't quite there last year because Drake was, but they're always in the bottom 5. As we know, the Cleveland State regime, they take over there, so it's a little bit of a new look on that front. Florida Atlantic was able to find their footing last year. UAB under Andy Kennedy is always a machine, but I think that that's such an interesting conference as well, where I feel like they really need a school like at Tulane to be able to step up, and they really need Temple to be able to find their footing too.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Tulane's a team that they're really aggressive right now in scheduling. I don't think some of their games have fully gotten contracted, the ones that I've been looking for, but they're being very aggressive in their requests, and I always think that's a good sign. Bringing in a couple Big East players and Scotty Middleton and Curtis Williams. And then, obviously Rowan Brumbaugh played 35 minutes a game last year. He's back, and Asher Woods is back, and Greg Glenn III is back. So Tulane with Percy Daniels, a nice depth piece with experience as well. They might have the opportunity to make a jump here. I think the reality is Memphis is basically entirely new. Now, Ashton Hardaway, of course, was there in the past, boomeranged back after a year at St. Mary's. But again, kind of like his role at St. Mary's, he's probably a 10 to 15 minutes a game kind of guy, maybe an extension of the coaching staff, but based on all his learnings and being a coach's son. But you got Duke McDaniel, Sincere Parker, and Aaron Bradshaw, really the headline names coming in to lead Memphis. But Parker, he had a real defensive issues while at McNeese at that level. That's a big concern, I think, for Memphis. They're going to have to mix and match with their rotations. They have a ton of other options, of course, with Hassan Abdul Hakim coming over from UTRGV, Curtis Givens III from LSU, and Julius Thedford from WKU. Those guys, from the 2 through 4 spots, they're going to have to really have bona fide roles for defense and offense, because Parker himself is just an offensive microwave. So that opens the door, like you said, like Temple, again, a transfer-heavy team, but brought in, Darian Ford from Arkansas State, who can really, really play. He's a 6'3" senior looking for a primary role opportunity. AJ Smith was a guy averaging 11.5 a game at Charleston last year. So again, some good pieces, but these guys are all coming up a level. Gavin Griffiths is the one guy coming over from Power Five, unless you want to throw in Spencer Mahoney, who barely played over at California. But Gavin Griffiths at Nebraska was also a bench guy. So again, it's hard to really lay your hat down on a preseason favorite. South Florida is the team with the most upside and continuity, you could argue, because if you think about Isaiah Nelson and Joseph Pinion, both already playing for Brian Hodgson and now coming over to help Hodgson get South Florida back, to the top of the American, just that alone is very compelling. Damian Collins obviously played at a high level in the SEC, although LSU struggled during his time there. And then they bring in Amajafo from Robert Morris, who had a very productive year, played in the NCAA tournament. Devin Hade was Central Connecticut's one of their two go-to guys throughout last season, over 14 points a game. So with those guys not having to be as big of role players at a place like USF, and you can run things around Nelson and Pinion. And then Wes Enos is the real wild card here, coming from D2 Lincoln Memorial, where he was an All-American. That was a guy that actually was getting high major offers and can really turn this from a, hey, big upside team, keep your eye on them, to bona fide, American Conference champion. So South Florida Bulls are really kind of where my eyes are right now.
Yep, with the South Florida Bulls, I thought that Hodgson was a really good hire for them. It certainly is a conference that's in a little bit of transition right now after they lost SMU a few seasons ago. You've got a lot of mixing and matching. They took on a lot of those Conference USA schools, but I'm right there with you. I do think that there are some schools with some upside, could use a little bit more out of Temple. I'm very questionable about them, but I think that this could be a year that Tulane is able to bust through as well. And then on the flip side, I do want to mention another conference that I feel like has had a really good offseason, the Coastal Conference, the CAA. I know that Rocco knows quite a bit about that conference. We have seen a lot of schools be able to make some big-time moves there. We'll talk about the CAA. We'll talk about a few other mid-majors. We'll dive into some teams that he's been impressed by here in the offseason and some power conference teams that he feels like have had a great offseason as well. We're going to do that with Rocco on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Houston Family Podcast.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Great to be rejoined by Rocco Miller, who does such amazing work over at Bracketeer.org. I know that he has been just so hard at work in the offseason, taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. And we were talking a little bit about the American Conference in the previous segment. How about if I bring up this conference, though, as well, as this is one of those low/mid majors that I think could have a come up, because I've noticed over the last few seasons the real mid-major conference that I've been impressed by the most is the Big West. But how about the CAA and all the moves that we've seen this offseason from these teams? Because you've got the UNC Wilmington Seahawks, who I like to call them the CAA Avengers, because they bring in pretty much everyone from within the conference. It's one of those cases where, if you remember Star Wars Episode 3, all these other schools are saying you were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. They have joined the Sith now with UNC Wilmington, so that's going to be fun. I absolutely love what Campbell has done here in the offseason. Charleston has added a lot of pieces as well. Heck, Elon a few days ago bringing Kepper Klonzich to help out down low as well. I look at this entire conference and I think that there are some shrewd, sneaky moves being made, and I think that this conference can make a lot of noise this season.
Yeah, and I think it can. Certainly whoever will be the representative will make noise. I'm pretty confident of that. The five, like you said, that I'm really looking at is that, I think there's really a big three between UNCW, Towson, and Charleston. The names we're familiar with and the roster level and the amount of investment in those three programs, especially Wilmington and Charleston, is second to none. Then, of course, Towson has not only the experience factor on the court, but with Pat Skiri, I think this is year 14 for Pat. So he knows his way around the league. One other factor, too, is Delaware moves to the Conference USA. So I think I really have a lot of respect for Martin Inglesby and what Delaware did in this league over the years. They were always competitive. They stepped up and took the tournament title a couple of years ago. So
nearly did last year, too.
Sorry, I'm off on my years already. Yeah, when they made the run to the finals. Yeah, that's right. With Delaware out of the way, I think it opens even more doors. William and Mary, I think, is the team that has the most volatile results based on the way they play. This will be the second year together. And with 4 senior starters, I get it that Fraser Pulliam and Lally didn't start most of the games, but they will be counted on heavily this year. And Chase Lowe did get a little bit more experience starting. They just have a really old team, added a couple really smart JUCO players in Ethan Connery and Reese Miller. They added Cade Haskins, who was out of eligibility, I think, at Dartmouth, but now comes over after Dartmouth's historically great year. That's a huge piece, I think, to be able to compete in this league. And, with their ability to shoot, like Chase Lowe's a 40% three-point shooter. Haskins was almost 37 at Dartmouth. Joel Emmanuel, Clay Dickinson transfer, who also should see quite a few minutes, was a big-time player in the NEC, was also a 36% shooter. So Brian Earl's system should work interchangeably well. Based on what I'm seeing in the projected rotation, all their players, Greg, are going to be 6'4" to 6'8". So a lot of positionless, certainly not enough size to really dominate the league, but there's going to be a lot of 5-out offense, a lot of great looks. They'll be able to bury some teams, and they'll be able to pull off some upsets with the way they play. And then, of course, you said Campbell. I think that's really a fascinating one. John Andrzejczyk and I are friends, and, of course, he's coming off the national championship at Florida. Nobody works harder than this guy. I know there's a lot of hardworking people. There's probably people that match how hard he works. So I'm not going to call him the hardest worker in the country, but I know nobody's going to outwork this guy. I see how he's hustling in scheduling and the way he's building this roster. Of course, getting Jeremiah Johnson, again, a big-time swing at the Green Bay stud. Came over with Gottlieb originally, played very well there when he got his chances. See if that kid can mature more, but he's got a ton of talent, as we both know. Callenbay from Western Kentucky took advantage of the JUCO rule. He'll be able to plug in as a starter, as a 6'6", probably play the 4 even. And Derek Hamilton from UTEP, I mean, he's got some upside. Again, going from Conference USA and down to the CAA, it's a little bit of a overall step down. So those guys can put up a little bit bigger numbers, you would imagine. DJ Smith was a key player for Robert Morris as well. I like everything that John's building. I know the assistants really well. They're going to continue to work. I just think it's a team, even if they start slow, they're going to be really, really feisty all the way until the CAA tournament, and maybe even be peaking at the CAA tournament, which is not a bad place to be.
Absolutely. With this Campbell team, I am very bullish on them. I'm so glad that you mentioned Andrzejczyk and the way that he has been working this portal. I've been very impressed by the guys that they've been able to bring in. Towson not bringing in a ton of transfers, but when you're bringing back all the guys that you are, and you know what you've got in Pat Scary. Scary is a guy that I know is going to be able to get the job done, and he is scary for everyone else out there in the conference as well. And I do think that that is going to be one to take a look at as well. And I want to open this up for you as well, because we've talked about some of these mid-majors, we've talked about some of these lower schools, but is there a team or two at more of the power conference level that you're taking a look at? They're not getting a lot of coverage right now, but you think that they might be a little bit sneaky and they might be on the come up this year?
Well, I know my Washington Huskies, Greg.
Yes, Desmond Claude coming in.
Yeah, but they don't really qualify now, because I do know that they were highlighted this week both on the Big Ten Network and CBS and others. So maybe not sneaking up on anybody anymore with Desmond Claude in the fold. But I do think with Washington's ability to, I think some of the misnomers out there, if you look at the roster and you think it's going to look the same as it did before with Ketmang, but there's a German big man coming over, was actually just in the European playoffs yesterday. I think it's really hard to understand what it's going to look like when you go from FIBA basketball and playing really well. And his name is Hannes Steinbach. He's a 2006 born guy, so he's 19 years old. He should be also playing in the FIBA U19, which I'm very fired up about. Starts at the end of this month in Switzerland. So I don't think he's going to make it to Seattle till late July. So that could be a problem in the early season for him getting comfortable with not only college basketball, but also learning how Washington wants to play this year. He's got the talent, and the NBA guys all love this kid, and the length to really make a difference, both scoring and rebounding and blocking shots and shooting the ball at 6'9". You can consider him a rotational big, at least for projections. Lathan Somerville from Rutgers played 21 minutes a game last year, same conference. he was a very early pickup by the Huskies, but, he got a considerable amount of resources to come there. I would imagine he might actually be the starter at center. Those three are very, very solid unless, something goes sideways. And then as a fourth piece, Mate Traore, we'll see if he can deliver. He started at Maryland, had to go back to JUCO. He was the number 2 JUCO player out of Frank Phillips. There's your 4 rotational bigs. A lot of the prognostications I've seen are only really talking about Kepmang. I think a lot of people are forgetting that all 4 of those bigs are there to make a difference. And then I think everybody appreciates the value of the other guys, with Kamari Peterson and JJ Mandequit being, obviously Peterson being the starting point guard, but Mandequit a big-time prospect. He'll also be in the FIBA U19, I believe. He hasn't made the final roster for Team USA, but he's expected to make that roster. He played in the last, I think it was the U17 games 2 years ago. Again, he's a very talented, he was the number 2 point guard in the country at one point. I think he finished number 4 or 5. So there's a lot of talent in the backcourt. Then you add your Jacob Ognisevich, who is the ASUN Player of the Year. We know about Wesley Yates and Desmond Claude, who do have experience playing together. And of course, Quincy Pondexter joining the staff from USC, who knows kind of how to manage those two together. There's a lot to like, but then there's still a lot to prove. and I didn't even mention Zoom Diallo, who of course is a very talented guy ready to make another jump. And Bryson Tucker, who, a lot of raw potential guy. I know Indiana fans were frustrated with him, but you can't deny his future talent and potential. So, there's just loaded with pieces. You don't have to hit on every single one of these guys. You just need 7 or 8 of them to come together. I think that's a very dangerous team. So I had to start there, but I think outside of just Washington, I like what Vanderbilt's been able to do as a sleeper in the SEC. Once again, Byington's just doing a great job with his roster. I would also mention Texas A&M, even though the roster came together late, they could be a sneaky good team just based on playing buckyball style at the high major. I'm very fascinated to see how that goes. Right now, they project as probably a bubble team. But again, I'm looking for some overlooked teams here that not enough people are talking about. And I think, and the ACC is really an area that I'm intrigued by, because I am 100% sold that NC State will be a tournament team, and especially with Darian Williams and all the guys there with Will Wade. I don't think that's too much of a secret anymore, but I do think with what Virginia brought in, Malik Thomas, our guy from San Francisco, is there now, and a ton of other really good pieces in Ryan Odom's system. This isn't going to be your old Virginia with Tony Bennett anymore. It's going to be an exciting Virginia team, if you can believe that. And then I also think SMU, with just their sheer talent and size, we'll see if they can actually pick up some good wins this year. They just failed in all their chances last year. Be a much different team. They project to be a very dangerous team. So if the ACC can get teams like NC State, Virginia, and SMU to really play to their potential, and then you keep the Louisville's, Clemson's, and Duke, North Carolina combo in there, they could easily jump up to 7-8 bids this year. And I think that it could be a big year for the league.
Yep, I think so as well. With the ACC, it's also all about just having these teams avoid these terrible losses, having Boston College and teams like that being a little bit better. I think will go a long way for them. And what goes a long way on this podcast is great guests like you, Rocco. You're one of the best. You do such an amazing job. Take a look at this amazing game of college basketball. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
I appreciate it, Greg. Thank you. Yeah, you can follow me on X, Twitter, and Blue Sky, all the above, at Rocco Miller 8. My website, bracketeer.org. We continue to pump out different types of schedule information. It's all being worked on behind the scenes, so you can't fully see it right now here as you hear this, but by the end of June, you'll be able to see Power Conference scheduling nuggets. Obviously, you've probably noticed teams like Georgia, Iowa State, and Purdue and others have already released their schedule. But for everybody else still working on key games, that will be your go-to place for seeing everything in one snapshot and on one page per league. If you feel compelled to, we're also accepting any kind of support you want to offer by hitting the support button at the top. We always appreciate that. And coming up this season, we'll have more and more announcements coming, but probably a little too early to share all that.
Yep, and Rocco is doing such amazing work. Taking a look at this amazing game of college basketball. One of the hardest men out there working in college basketball, and every single time he joins me, he lends such incredible insights. So a big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. It's now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline. timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letter CM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off-season. The off-season news and notes are starting to wind down just a little bit more, so probably going to have a few more two-part conversations like today's, and we're certainly going to be getting you guys covered with regards to a lot of conference previews. Those are going to be coming in the next few weeks. Also, appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.